Hi, welcome to our podcast. My name is Ren Shue. I am a third year at UC Berkeley, and I'm majoring in integrative biology and computer science.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a senior, and my majors are legal studies and Chicano Latino studies.
Hi, my name is Chelsea. I'm a senior majoring in media studies and minoring in ethnic studies. Cesar Campos is an LA-based artist. You can check him out on Instagram at Cesar_Pato12 to look at his work and interact with him. We started our conversation by asking him where his journey of being an artist began.
This is Cesar Campos. I am an artist based out of Los Angeles, California. Art has actually been very much a part of my everyday life for as long as I can remember. Actually, when I was a kid, I would sit and just draw soccer uniforms for ever. The main mediums that I have used in the past have been poetry, performance, photography, video editing, and painting. Painting is what I'm mostly focused on now. I wouldn't really understand my life or who it is that I am without all of the different creative outlets that I've used. I have been very influenced by street art. I just enjoy the process of really being out in the street and seeing what is happening, running into people, forming some idea of the community that it is that I'm working in. And the way that I do that is I really just grab my cameras and I'll go find just different colors in whatever community I'm in. I'll literally go and look at walls. There's a lot of street art right now, so there's a lot of murals that I go and just sort of pay homage to, just really admire them. And then I also try to work them into the physical space that I'm trying to create with my own art. The majority of the time it will be about color, and so one of the things that I do, I'll literally just grab my cameras and drive around or walk around and find all these spaces that I can use as inspiration, and it helps my process to understand how a specific color is used, and then I try to bring that color back into my own work. Part of the way that I describe it, and particularly to color, because I've been doing a lot of work around color the last couple of years, I'm always sort of looking for the next color. So right now we're in fall entering winter, and I'm already thinking about what color is going to be prominent next spring or something like that. And I try to formulate a lot of pieces around that color. It's very tied to street art. It's street art is my roots. That's where I started, and so I really love to be out in the street and just taking photos and finding that kind of street art. What we are living with right now in this COVID-19 world, the new normal, I think there's going to be a very specific space for artists and musicians and everything else. A lot of us have spent a lot of time in isolation. A lot of us have gone back into the house and really spent time with our loved ones, our families. But I think that as artists, as musicians, we have a responsibility to try to be what I call cultural curators. We have a responsibility to curate spaces for people to go out to. So it's something that I'm really thinking about right now. It's something that I'm really working on, because I understand that as we progress into having herd immunity about this virus, we're going to have to do some work to get people back out to the streets, to get people back to events, to get people back to that appreciation, to that forming of culture.
Wow, I think it's really interesting and unique how he used different forms of art to contribute to one form of art that he's constantly using, that being street art. And I feel like it's very unique in the sense that we typically don't usually hear about street artists or their journeys or the steps that they do to create the art that they display. And I feel like it's very important that it's being talked about.
Cesar also spoke about his experience being part of the farm worker community and how that ties with his art.
being part of a farming community is actually really interesting. I'm an immigrant to this country. I came to this country when I was 10 years old, landed in the San Joaquin Valley. My parents were farm workers. I've worked in the fields very much. I've done, picking oranges, grapes, all of that. And one of the things that I think about a lot is, one, I think that there's a rigorous type of work ethic and discipline that one learns just by being in those farm worker spaces, because you really like that work ethic that you learn by being around people who are working all the time, who are like, just in that space, working in the fields and so on. You learn a specific type of work ethic and a discipline that like carries on with you all of your life. And I've applied that not just to like my education or my career, my work, but also like my art. I've attached a lot of discipline and a lot of rigorous work ethic associated with it. I think that is one of the most amazing things that happens when you are in a farm worker community. The other thing that I think is really interesting and something that I'm thinking about a lot now is art in the context of who buys art and who actually spends time curating art or being collectors of art and so on. And you find that by and large, people with higher incomes are the people who will invest in pieces of artwork. And I find that to be an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity for us to make more art that would be available and useful to lower income communities, particularly because these cultures, these communities that you see out in the fields, these are the exact same communities that they have like so much art just woven into like the culture, our cultures, our heritage. There's a lot of art associated with it. There's a lot of color associated with it. There's dance associated with it. There's food associated with it. And all of those are different forms of art. And they're so intrinsic to those communities. And a lot of people tell me, well, like lower income people aren't going to do that. They don't have the means to do it. And I'm like, it sucks that there's a separation, because in reality, like those are the cultures that have forever been so rich in like culture and so rich in art. I find that as a sort of like a personal objective to try to talk to more people.
That was really insightful. I hadn't thought about the discipline and work ethic aspect of making art. I think it's clear now, based on what Cesar said, that it's not just the inspiration and motivation that creates art, but also the artist's discipline to actually start and finish a piece of art. He also brings up an important point of accessibility in the art world. I think it's ironic and frustrating that even though Chicano culture is full of artistic expression through artwork, music, dance, and food, the actual pursuit of art and curating art is only accessible to higher income communities. And I think it's great that artists like Cesar are breaking down this wall by taking on the role of curating art and art spaces for everyone in the community. The next topic we were interested in was Cesar's environmental justice work. In Cesar's own words, he describes environmental justice as the collision of environmental and social justice movements. It particularly involves policy and resource funding to low-income communities that are usually the most impacted by polluting facilities. And so one of the main projects Cesar is working on right now and has been working on for the past 5 years is the Exide Cleanup Project. And we asked him to describe what this project's goal is and his role in the project.
For the last 5 years or so, I've been working on it's a huge environmental justice project in Southeast Los Angeles communities. It's a project to clean up nearly 10,000 residential properties after a facility was shut down. The facility, we believe, contaminated the area with lead in the soil. And so I've been involved in this project for a very long time. It's one of the most exciting projects that I think is happening across the state. And it's an unprecedented type of investment in environmental justice communities by the state legislature. And so the project is really based on working with property owners and just different community members in the coordination of getting the properties into cleanup. There's a lot of media attention associated with it. There's a lot of different people who have a lot of opinions about what the project should look like and so on and so forth. My piece specifically in the project has been all of the community relations associated with the cleanup. So my unit effectively coordinates the majority of the cleanups. The state denied that there was even a problem in this community, but because different community groups and community residents, community advocates pooled together to really advocate for further investigation of this facility, over the years, we do see that this project begins. And in many ways, it is a win for activism. It is a win for environmental justice. Just the fact that the project began to do the cleanups in this manner. My work and my approach is to continue to incorporate those environmental justice principles into the actual process of cleanup. The activists, a lot of people worked to get the project off the ground. It's up to us now, the people who are working on the project, to make sure that we are doing it in a way that is fair and in a way that is just and in a way that is equitable and safe for the community.
That was really powerful. I think the importance of recognizing the disproportionate effect of environmental pollution on minority communities is being able to put a face to the environmental harm caused by government policies that direct pollution towards these low-income communities. And like Cesar said, being involved in helping these communities can be as simple as starting to listen to them about the harm they are facing and what outcomes they want.
I think environmental justice is a very hot topic in the state right now. I think that a lot of people are starting to understand environmental justice as a discipline, the discipline where the environmental movement meets the social justice movement, and we really start to focus on communities that have been disenfranchised, not just by socioeconomic statuses and by isolation, but also because the majority of the undesirable land uses in the state of California are placed in those low-income communities. Environmental justice is really a discipline, and it's a set of principles that you move into to find spaces that you can find activism on and do projects to better the outcomes of those communities. It's something that environmental justice as a whole, I've been working on for about a decade now. It's an incredible, set of standards that I use, and in the past, I've actually lectured at UC Berkeley on community science data and on some projects called the Identifying Violations Affect Neighborhoods project that I worked on in Fresno County. Really what we're trying to show and what environmental justice as a discipline teaches us is that all of these things you have to really bring to the forefront. You have to let communities sort of speak for themselves and value and listen to the outcomes that those communities want for themselves. And that's a great place to start because everybody can do that.
I also think one thing became really apparent through this segment, and that was that both Cesar's art and work are heavily centered on engaging and bettering the community. His role in the Exide Project, managing community relations and coordinating cleanups, ties directly into his efforts in creating art inspired by and accessible to the community.
In this next section, I shared with Cesar how growing up in the suburbs, I was really shielded from a lot, and I never thought about the communities that were often harmed by government policies. I asked what he recommended what someone like me, who isn't affected by a lot of these issues, could do.
The everyday person can do a lot to help in environmental justice communities. And I think, regardless of where you are, even if you are in a community that is more affluent, there will most of the time be some neighborhoods that are most disproportionately impacted. And one of the things that I like to say to people is that land use processes, permitting processes, the lack of regulation, the lack of enforcement, all of those things happen every day. And everyone is a participant. Whether you like to see it or not, that's different. But even if you don't like to participate, even if you don't like to be civically engaged by voting or by attending, city council meetings, that is a certain level of participation you're just choosing to not do. Even in Torrance, even in Wilmington, and all of these different places, you can find, city council meetings that are going to decide what gets placed in a certain area, whether it's, the Port of LA or a new development, and that's going to have some impact. And so the sooner and the more that people can do to be civically engaged in those processes, that's something that everybody can do.
Yan Shui, Emily, and myself really enjoyed speaking with Cesar. It was such an honor to highlight his work, and we're so excited for his future events and projects. He lets us know how to reach him next, so make sure to check him out.
The best way for people to get into contact with me right now is through Instagram. I house a lot of stuff on Instagram, and I build a lot of palettes associated with it. I'm reachable there. Anyone who wants to follow, please do. And also, just if you ever want to get in contact with me, just feel free to message me, and I'll get right back to you. At Instagram, you can find me at Cesar_Pato12.
Pushing and shoving in the sea. There's a sense of excitement. Watch it come alive.